Welcome, designers. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 4. I've skipped over Chapter 3, and I encourage you to review the content. However, there's quite a bunch of information that I'm going to hit on in Chapter 4. So be free to, go through that chapter if you'd like. However, you will only be responsible for Chapter 4 this week and for the quiz in Chapter 4. So today I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to get started. And this is a great overview of how interior design started and the process of the practice of interior design. So today we're going to talk about the profession of interior design and where it came from and how it's landed today. So let's get started. These are some little quotes and sayings that you can refer to in your textbook, but one of the IFI Design Frontier, they're an organization, and sometimes they create these little insights. And so it says that we use space responsibly. We practice our profession with high regard for engaging the world's economy and natural resources in a sustainable manner. We design for health, safety, well-being, and the needs for all. I keep telling you that that's going to come up time and time again. We design for public spaces. We design for the health, safety, and well-being of human beings, and we want to make sure that we're doing that responsibly. So what we want to target today is some of the misconceptions about interior design profession. Also understanding a little of the historical reference and where it came from, some of the major components of this profession, and also summarize some of the career paths that you may want to choose in this profession. So let's get started. Now, we want to talk a little bit too about some of the contrast between residential and commercial design, talk a little bit about some of those trends also in design. Now, let's just get right into the misconception about interior design in general and the overall profession, let's say. A lot of times people just see HGTV and see those reality shows. So this has really ginned up a lot of interest in the interior design profession. It really has caused a wave of popularity seeing the accessible design. So it's created a shortage of instructors to teach design, and also even schools that offer this as a profession. So we are seeing, because of those reality shows, there's been great trending towards interior design. Now, also, there is a misconception about the name interior designer. A lot of people will refer to you as their decorator, interior decorator. And you will see as we continue throughout this entire semester, there is a huge difference between being a decorator and being a designer. It's almost like baking a cake. The cake baker is actually adding the ingredients, creating the foundation of the cake and building up the cake. And then the cake decorator comes in and just applies surfaces to make it beautiful. We as interior designers do the entire project. So it's a lot more heavier weighted in creating the space from beginning to end than you think. So little bit of interesting, ideas there when you're being called a decorator. And also too, a lot of people have a misconception when they see these shows that the design project is just kind of wrapped up in a 45-minute non-commercial free hour. And that's not necessarily true. So students often come and sit in my class and they're looking to be actually interior decorators instead of really understanding the broad stroke of what this career entails. So we will see how, those misconceptions are going to be taken away. So some of the targets is summarizing the roles and responsibilities of interior designers. As you see, it's going to be a lot more weighty than you think. Also, we're going to contrast some of the different types of design and kind of hit on some of the main trends. So now, like I said, due to, reality TV shows and so forth, a lot of people are really finding out that this industry is a lot different than what's in a TV show. And students are kind of looking just to do all that fun, putting application on the spaces, which is part of it. And it's a great part of it. And it's wonderful. But there is a lot of different options and more to it, as you'll see. So, interior design as a profession in the United States. Now, this is just a little saying, but we want to talk about where it started and how it grew. Okay. And really what this wants to say is that when we think about design, it really is a reflection of our society, culture, and the time we're in. When we go in the past, we look at Louis XV, we look through the Baroque period. We're going to study that. We'll see how design has changed over the years, and in the United States, how it bloomed and became a real profession. So the interior design profession in the United States, we have a lot of different, obviously challenges. They're very complex due to, working with people. People are complex. The places you have to, worry about the four walls. You are confined to a space. We also have to be very in tune with the products that we use. So clients need to translate, they want your clients' needs translate to space that enhance the human relationship, right? That's what we do. We take the information, we translate that, and we transform that space based on what that human is needing. We also finish, we use a lot of finishes, we shape the surfaces of things, and we also provide what's called FF&E. You're going to hear me say this over and over again. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment. This is a broad part of what we do, is supply and do space planning for all of the contents that are inside a room. And you'd be surprised the amount of specifications you'll do. Even when you think equipment, what is that? It could be the little hair dryers in a hotel, the little coffee makers, microwaves. It could be the television sets, audio visual equipment. So there is equipment. Even in medical facilities I design, I may add in blanket warmers and various other equipment. The furniture, fixtures might be a situation, a hat fixture, shelving, that sort of thing that help to fill the content of the space. So we really do a lot of things as a profession, besides working with the people, the client. We are translating the space into their needs. We are reshaping, informing, creating walls, actually designing it, and then filling it with all the product and necessary things to function. So, describe the job of an interior designer. How is the profession of interior design or design architect similar or different from your perception of this career? Well, it is interesting. People have a perception, but they don't really realize how closely we are related to interior architecture. It's a new term these days that we use. And technically, designers cannot be referred to as interior architects. It's not super accepted, but we hear it all the time. We're starting to see colleges use that phrasing. But the truth is that we are involved in a lot of the architectural details. We as designers are allowed to add demising walls, soffits to ceilings, a lot more architectural features than you think. In fact, many contractors are doing design build with interior designers and foregoing an architect altogether. The architect makes sure that the foundation, the walls, the stud, the roof systems are in place. And then we come in, and anything that isn't load-bearing walls is our responsibility, or we can partake in designing that. So what is a profession? In general, what is a profession? It is an occupation that requires specialized knowledge and in-depth academic education and training, which is why you're here in the class, to get some understanding. We have a 3-year program or 3-level program at OCC. And I'll tell you, every one of those classes are instrumental into becoming a professional interior designer. So a profession always has these elements, education and specialized knowledge. They also have a code of conduct. They also have examinations. Then they have clearly defined services they provide. We also have professional associations and a body of knowledge that we pull from. So in any profession, you'll find that this is true. Whether you're a doctor, whether you're a real estate agent, you'll see that this is all true for any profession. The phrase interior design, where did that come from? Because that was not commonly used or appeared before World War II. Before the 20th century, interior decorators didn't even exist. We used local craftsmen, we used artisans, shopkeepers, stone cutters. It goes all the way back to Egyptian, or even in the Old Testament Bible. Well, you'll see they're building temples with carvers, wood carvers, fabric makers. So they used various tradesmen to create interiors. That's how it used to be done, until it came into a certain period where people started seeking a cohesive design. And I tell you, it was working for centuries, creating lovely spaces. Just go and visit the Palace of Versailles. You will see ostentatious, amazing design details using these various tradesmen. Now, interior decorator, this is the first pioneer of interior design. Her name is Elsie de Wolfe, probably on the quiz. Elsie de Wolfe, she is the one who began the interior decorating profession. So she is our first example of someone in this profession. She kind of spurted on. And how she started her career is kind of supervising other people's homes. And she really paved the way for decorating as a profession for women, because prior to World War I, there wasn't a lot of professions for women. So when we started getting influx of immigrants and more wealth was coming into this country, you were finding that those folks were wanting a more inclusive design. They were bringing in some of the Victorian from Europe, and Elsie de Wolfe was the go-to person. So she started to turn this dark Victorian interiors into her own branding, lightening up, making more comfortable spaces. So that's kind of her niche. But then it extended, and then she started doing commercial work. As the Industrial Revolution came, the war, we started having more offices, and now that started opening up for commercial work as well. The first courses offered interior design. So as we are now expanding from homes into commercial spaces, we see our first school open up in New York. And it was in 1904, and it's now called Parsons, and it was the New York School of Applied and Fine Arts. But Parsons is still there today. In fact, sometimes you'll see Project Runway. I love that show. They will be filming in Parsons School. It's right downtown. It's very iconic, and it's an old school, and they still do lots and lots of education there. So then there was the New York School of Interior Design that followed in 1916. And then the post-War I middle class. What was happening now, prior to this, you were having just the wealthy engage and indulge in interior design. But then as the middle class started to prosper, you're finding that they now have more access and expendable funds, and they started to promote more interior design. So that's how we see the profession grow. Now, Dorothy Dapper, she really created a phenomena. She made design accessible to the common, everyday middle-class woman by actually having a regular column in Good Housekeeping magazine. And when you see, when we see HG or HG magazine, it's actually, that is the Good Housekeeping magazine. It's funny, HGTV spurs from this actual original publication. My dad used to actually sell this magazine. He said nurses were his best clients, but this made it so exciting. Women would come and get their Good Housekeeping magazine and had tips to design. And pretty soon now you see that she is trending. And so she would just give decorating advice. And now that really started to take off. This is where you start seeing more interior design trends in the middle class. And she she came into the scene in 1888, passed in 1969, but she was really iconic and a great influence in pushing interior design and trends through publications. Now, once you start getting, a profession, the next natural thing that comes out of a profession is usually some organizations. And a lot of times these are necessity. Maybe there's a depression. You see unions come up because they want fair wages and that sort of thing. Well, the economic depression in the 1930s kind of influenced the performance of some of these organizations. Like I said, you'll see unions and things of that nature because people wanted fair wages. And so we finally see our first profession for interior design. AIID. It was American Institute for Interior Decorators. You see, we haven't seen the word design yet. Okay, we're still decorators at this point. And they were founded in Chicago and also relocated in New York finally in 1936. So this really became now a group that can champion together creating codes of conducts and standards in the profession and get together and have that commonality, shared design ideas and trends. And then what started to happening is that you started to see retail come up. And now furniture stores, we think of Lazy Boy and Ashley and all these furniture chains. Well, now furniture stores started including interior decorators in their business to help save their business. And we see this true today. You can go to Living Spaces or various other furniture stores, and they have in-house interior designers. Well, that's what started way back. The retailers needed something to draw people in. So they started to bring in interior decorators to help sell their product. I personally have experience in retail working in a furniture store, and we offer in-house design services. So it's the same today. And you're seeing that trending more and more, but that's to help with the sales. And it really did save the retail furniture industry, especially during these economic times, downturns. It is important, we talk about interior decorators. There weren't a lot of careers for women. So it really started off as a career for women, but now that is not the case. And we have, a wide branch of women and men that are really in the profession. And in fact, some of the most top interior design firms are generated from men, Rockwell and Gensler and all that. But this was a great founding career for women, and nurses and teachers. There weren't a lot in our, different careers that women were able to. So it is important that this kind of launched women career and organizations. Now, why do we have professional organizations? They really do help with networking. They help with setting standards. They help with really the camaraderie, and there's a lot of benefit in being in a design organization. We'll talk about that later in the semester. So now let's talk about, how the field started getting broader. We went from just decorating homes, now the furniture stores, maybe a few commercial spaces. So after World War II, as you can see, commercial design became increasingly more important. Now, the men are off to war, women are in factories, they're in various now into the workplace. And so we're starting to see that we need different furniture concepts. Now codes are starting to be implemented for safety. Office furniture became a thing. That wasn't a thing. And then creating like cubicles. So because of this onset of commercial booming and people out in the workforce and more masses in commercial spaces, we now start to need designers to space plan those elements to make them effective. And so we start to see the open, office concept. So owners would just grab these warehouses, house a lot of manufacturer employees, start creating individual offices. So it required more skill set. So we see that this is starting to change. Whenever you have a change or a new industry, you'll see that new products develop. So hence the module office furniture, right? So World War II, after World War II, this is really where we see the boom in the Industrial Revolution. And we start to see a lot of really kind of an awakening, especially in America, a booming economy, and we start to really go forge forward in industrial design and so forth. So the Interior Design Educators Council, we started creating standards in our education. As we are starting to design more and more for the public health, it's now important that we start learning and implementing some of these safety codes and having some standards in education. So we need a governing body to set standards. So that developed in 1968. And it helps these schools like Parsons and Interior Design School in New York to create up-to-date standards in the profession. And we do this today. Some of the schools that you go to will be accredited with an educational council to make sure that they are teaching you the up-to-date codes, up-to-date practices. So it's important that the educational field really keeps the standards going. Now how this has evolved, it went from IDEC, Interior Design Educational Council. That was the first educational organization. Also, the Journal of Interior Design, they do a lot of research for education as far as interior design. So these are their logos, but it's developed just like in the codes. And we also have an organization that helps with standards for commercial and residential design. So if you were going to be, let's say, a commercial interior designer, you would be encouraged to take part or join IIDA, which is the Commercial Interior Design Association. Now, if you were going to maybe be a residential designer, you might be encouraged to join ASID. So there's different organizations that specialize in different types of design, and we go also into that. But this organization that helps with our educational standards, that starts to develop more and more as we start doing more complex architectural features. So another foundation, the Foundation of Interior Design Education Research, used to be called FIDER accreditation. Very high standards in education. So they developed as we started becoming an interior designer, okay, from decorator to designer. So I graduated from a FIDER accredited college. If you graduate from an accredited university, you can apply for the NCIDQ exam, which for interior designers to become certified, and it takes less experience because you graduated from a college that's accredited. That's why these accreditation foundations are important, okay? They know that if you graduated from a FIDER accredited school, that they know that you're receiving top-notch education that is up to date. Now that education institute changed its name, and now it's called the Council for Interior Design Accreditation. So we call it CIDA, same thing. So if our program was founded on a CIDA accreditation, it's very difficult to keep it up. You have to constantly be reviewing your coursework, keep upping the ante, implementing their standards. So it is a very rigorous process becoming accredited, but it's very important that we adhere to these standards and teach to them. So CIDA accreditation means that the Institute conforms with and maintains professional standards required to prepare students for interior design practices. So this is what that actual like logo looks like. So if you're like investigating various colleges, you might want to find out if they are CIDA accredited. Now, why? Like I talked about, because when you go to become a certified interior designer, if you graduate from one of these accredited institutions, it makes it so that if you go to apply for this particular test, it's called the NCIDQ test. It makes it so that when you go, you have lots of different prerequisites. You need so much experience, so much education. Well, if you graduate from a fighter or a CID accredited college, you need less experience. So that's the reason why. Okay. The CIDQ, Certified Interior Design Qualifications, they sponsor the NCIDQ exam. Okay. And this exam is a 3-part exam that really tests the interior designer's knowledge. It's a 3-part exam. One is on the fundamentals of design, which you're learning now. It's really important you hang on to this textbook if you ever want to be a certified interior designer, because you'll refer back to it. Then they have a second test that's all about the profession. Then they have a third test, which is the practicum. That is when you physically drag, drop, and work on like floor plans and bringing in details and how to do code. So it's not just a multiple choice. It's more, applicable. And that one is really tricky. So I am NCIDQ certified, but I just got my certification in 2022, and I started taking this test in 2019. I passed the first 2 parts, but it took me 4 times to pass the practicum. So it is not an easy test and was very humbling. A lot about codes and safety and well-being. Once again, that's the whole point. So this NCIDQ test, it's very expensive, but it does really focus on the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And as a commercial designer, I think it does add a lot of accreditation to my profession. So the health, safety, and welfare, we say HSW, and you're going to hear me say that a lot, like I said, because public spaces are important, and we want to make sure that we are providing and being responsible. So in 1970, all the way to 1990, there had been added pressure and responsibility for interior designers. Tragic fires, strict fire codes, rapid growth of businesses. So they created a need for us to become very efficient in our space planning, being able to create, design furniture, modular spaces. Also, with the addition of technology, right? Personal computers. We used to have the big chunky monitors. Now, what's the problem? We have to integrate a lot more electrical. Then we have laptops. Now we have to integrate Wi-Fi. So our industry is constantly changing. Okay. So now we've got a lot more pressure on us to learn and navigate all this new technology and needs. Okay. So the personal computer, like I said, you got a computer. Now what else do I have? What problems? I have glare. I have to worry about carpal tunnel. I have to worry about how these people are sitting in their chair, the right kind of furniture that is ergonomically efficient so people don't get damaged. My husband was in a cubicle for 30 years doing loans, but he is very tall, and that affected his body. He later became on disability just from back injuries for all those years in bad office furniture. So we are responsible to really create a healthy environment and work with the owners to make the employees even happy. So how do you avoid glare, carpal tunnel, back issues, neck issues, even climate control? So there's a lot of issues that started to come up that made it that we need more education. Environmental issues created a need for green interiors and sustainability. So there's lots of trends coming that now we need more education. okay? Technology, now green design. So you can see that it's ever changing. Then in 1990, the federal government passed ADA Act. Okay, it's a civil act. It's called American Disability Act. And they now implemented on a federal level that any building getting federal funds must adhere to ADA, making that building accessible. Okay, so now we have to learn about aisleways and different counter heights and how to make the restrooms accessible and handicap bars. So that added another layer to our education. So suddenly there became kind of a need for like a real professional title for interior designers. Now with these federal standards, technology, green design, they started to come up with a title registration for professionals. Now, certain states require that you have a certain title registration. You would literally have to register with the state and prove that you have the education and all the examination to make yourself a professional interior designer. Some states like Alabama, you cannot call yourself an interior designer unless you have the examination pass, like the NCIDQ, and you register with the state. Now, California is not one of those states. So basically anyone can call themselves an interior designer, which is a little scary actually. But we do have the IDEX test, which means that you become certified in California. That shows you can stamp drawings. If you pass the NCIDQ, that's ways that the public can tell or differentiate it between a very skilled designer and not. But in the state of California, it's not required. Alabama requires it. Certain states require you pass the NCIDQ, Florida, Las Vegas, or Nevada. California does not. So also too, required passing the National Council for Interior Design Qualifications, once again, NCIDQ, might be a prerequisite to be calling a professional interior designer. Legislation in Alabama and other states now limit the title a registered, like I said, interior designer, unless you register and pass the NCIDQ. Once again, it's not required in the state of California. This term body of knowledge may be in your quiz. It's basically a foundation of any profession. So in any profession, you have a body of knowledge you pull from, and it might include concepts, skills, activities, anything that carries out your work. For us, our body of knowledge, knowing codes, knowing materials, finishes, space planning, drafting, and we have a body of knowledge that we bring in to our profession. And this is why education is so important. Now, the body of knowledge, there's categories for interior designers. Like I said, we have to understand human environment needs, ergonomics, anthropometric. There's different kind of things that some psychology, some theories. We have to have great understanding of interior construction, codes and regulations. Like I said, extensive education and knowledge on finishes and products that we use. We have to know design theories, elements, principles, design, the design process, how to communicate that through working drawings, drafting, renderings, color board, design presentation. And then we have business practices, how to deal with invoicing, purchase orders, creating contracts and all that. So there's a lot of body of knowledge interior designers need to be a professional designer. And we actually teach all of this body of knowledge in OCC in our college. So let's get back in. So we're going to continue. Now, the challenges that we face as designers, like I said, it's just ever changing based on different trends and new technology. So, how do we gain this knowledge? Well, basically, first of all, rigorous education, and that's why you're here. It helps support our success. rigorous examination, make sure you're competent. And then there are professional organizations that help maintain those standards and services, and they even have their own code of conduct. Okay, so just like any profession, whether you're an architect, there's a code of conduct with AII. There's a code of conduct if you belong to ASID, American Society for Interior Designers. And so this helps us to maintain an integrity level in our profession. The funny thing is you can do all of this work and have all this body of knowledge, and your client will still call you a decorator. So it is sometimes appropriate to explain to them the little difference between a decorator and an interior designer based on your body of knowledge. So especially when you're doing commercial design, because it requires even more skill set. But don't be surprised if someone introduces you as their decorator. Now, here's the path to becoming a professional, and you guys are on your road to doing that. You know, you go through, and we call it the 4 E's, okay? Higher education. So education, it's what you're doing now. And as you finish this course, you'll realize how much education and skill set is really involved. Education, then experience. This is a very experience-driven profession. Experience trumps, honestly, higher education, like a master's in interior design, that it's not offered very often. Because really, in this case, like any real trait, building, contracting, it's really like getting that experience is part of that. So you take your education, and the more experience you get, that is really important. And we offer an internship, which gets your foot in the door to get some of that experience. I even went during my college years and got a job with an interior designer as an assistant. And that really helped, you know, up the ante in my education. And then examination. So you've got education, experience. Once you get enough of that, you can take the NCIDQ or the IDEX, and you go and get your go through the examination process. But it doesn't stop there. Once you passed the NCIDQ or IDEX or become certified in your state, you now have to do continuing education. So if you're thinking that this design is one and done, you're going to get your degree and move on, that's not the case. You will continue throughout this entire course of being an interior design profession, constantly be taking classes, whether it's for technology, learning the new AutoCAD that year, learning the new SketchUp or a different rendering program, or just taking courses in new codes. You're always doing continuing education. In fact, it's required in order to maintain your licensing or your certifications, just like any other profession. Nursing, real estate, you got to take those continuing education units. So the 4 E's: education, experience, examination, and more education. Probably on the quiz. Let's continue. So what are some of the functions and roles today that we as professionals and designers are ever evolving in? Okay, so it's really important that the profession involves understanding the definition of interior design. What exactly is it? If you can't articulate what the definition is of our career, and it's hard to then sell it to someone as a value. Residential design versus commercial design, to be able to know that difference, and also the demographic influences in today's function. We need to know demographic influences and how that influences and fluctuates this career. Okay. So let's talk about the definition per the CDQ, Certified Interior Design Qualifications. CIDQ, they are the organization that sponsors the NCIDQ exam. And so they have created a guideline and a definition. And if you go to the CIDQ website, you'll see the definition for interior design. So here they actually outline it as this: interior design is a distinct profession with specialized knowledge applied to the planning, and design of interior environments that promote health, safety, and welfare while supporting and enhancing the human experience. It's really good to read that over a few times and really understand that it's really touching the basis of our career. The fact that we take our specialized knowledge and we put it towards the planning of interior and designing of interior environments, that we promote health, safety, and welfare, and support beauty and enhance human experience. So it hits kind of all the points in this one definition. Now, designers primarily use their education and practice experience to develop design solutions, and that's what we do. But we also want to make sure that they are these points, functional. If your design isn't functional, then it's already a failure. We want to, once again, promote wellness and well-being of people. We want to protect the public. We want to reflect the culture and the people, and we want to make it beautiful, right, and attractive. So it's kind of like that definition hits all of those points, okay? Design solutions are also enhanced by creating memories, and we call that placemaking. It's kind of like a meaningful design that reflects the identity or evokes kind of a culture or a history of an individual or a space. And places will do this, like when you think of something that you're very fond of, in the way it's designed, it takes you back to that moment. When we as designers can really create a meaningful design that reflects or evokes a memory of culture or space, that's really a very successful design. And I think of different spaces that I've been into that it takes me right back to that space. So it's called place making. That might be one of your definitions. You want to kind of dive into that. We're not going to go into these discussions, but you can do that on your own time. Now, we're going to take dive into the difference between residential and commercial. So right now would probably be a good time to take your little break and then get right back to the lecture. And so I will let you pause at this moment. And I would say welcome back. So we are going to talk a little bit about the difference between residential and commercial design. Okay, as you know, I have expressed, I basically specialize in commercial and hospitality design. However, I did work for a residential designer for 4 or 5 years, and I flipped houses, and I like to tell my really good friends, I work for food. So I love to help my family and friends with design, but there is a fundamental difference, but it still uses all your education, still uses all the elements, principles, and the things that you know. They're just directed at different spaces. So residential design involves designing interiors for private homes, condominiums, apartments, townhomes. And even model homes are one of these crossovers. So sometimes you'll have residential design elements, but it can go from a residential to commercial. Let's say AKA a big hotel suite, right? That's like doing an entire apartment. It's very residential, but yet that's considered hospitality design. So there are some crossovers. Model homes are homes that are residential. You design these beautiful homes, but no one really lives in them. They're there to sell a tract of homes. And I used to design those too as well. It's a blast. That's actually the best of both worlds for me because it's pretty much commercial, but I get to do the residential fun in the experience and accessorize and so forth. Residential design overlaps commercial, like I said. People want to feel at home also. We're starting to see that residential design is kind of going into trends, resorts, and even healthcare, trying to make the finishes more luxe, make you feel like you're more home instead of an institution or a typical, hotel chain. So you're seeing trends like that. Um, Now, commercial design includes anything that's non-residential. So anything that's not a personal dwelling. And that may be your, offices, workplaces, healthcare, hospitality, which is restaurants, hotels, anything that's to do with lodging, retail spaces, industrial design, and or institutional and industrial. Transportation, someone's got to design the subway bathrooms, right? So it's so huge, commercial. And so we're gonna kind of dive into that. Now, residential versus commercial, most students who come into our campus really want to be residential designers. And then you find, as you start to gain more education and in your studies, we start to pull more students in the commercial design field. You will find that they're very different. And it just kind of depends the way you like to work, and are you just good one-on-one with people? Are you good more in a structured corporate environment, fast paced, different projects, not as personable? I mean, just kind of depends how you want to work. Commercial design, though, is roughly 55% of the total design practices. So you could see that commercial design is a huge part of it because there's such a broad amount of it. There are many similarities, though, in residential commercial design. For example, you're always picking the flooring, you're picking what's going on the walls, and you pick all the FF&E. So regardless if you're picking an office chair versus a beautiful, lounge chair, dining chair, you still have to pick the chair, right? They're just, they have different intentions. So there's a lot of different things. We still have to deal with lighting. We have to deal with, various equipment. You might be designing a kitchen with all different appliances, or you might be designing an office and have to add in the computer systems, the copy machines, the rec room, and so forth. So you'll see in these two images, totally different spaces, but yet someone had to, place that flooring and specify that. Someone had to place that flooring and specify that. We're using the elements, the principles, all of our education to create a cohesive design. Demographic influences, new areas of practice continue to emerge, like things like eco resorts. That's kind of a new trend. Hardest hit, like I kind of touched on before in the first lecture, that interior design is a luxury, and it is pretty hard hit when we hit a recession. The hardest recession that I remember in my time is in 2008, 2009. And anyone who's been in the industry for a long amount of time can absolutely recall that. And it hit us like a ton of bricks. I personally had to be creative and find new ways to work. And I started to sub myself out. Instead of my business, All Good Interiors, doing the job, other design studios, Richard McCormick Design, different architects would call me and say, hey, could I pay you to do this job for me? They themselves couldn't hire a new employee because they were short and didn't want to commit to a salary, so they were subbing people out. I, on the receiving end, were doing design and subbing myself out just to make ends meet. So a lot of firms went down. It was rough. And interior design firms vary too. So, you have design firms, architect firms, landscape design is a thing, construction firms, developers, government has their own, a lot of contractors and development company, and furniture, retail stores. So all of these areas were affected and are affected by the economy for sure. The demographic influences, design jobs are continuing to increase. That's a lovely thing. We are finding more and more need for design, and people are being exposed to design more and they want it. And they're realizing, gee, it isn't as easy as just HGTV, right? Especially when it comes to color, I notice. Employment for interior designers expect to be up 4% by 2026. So in a couple of years, so it's increasing. You'll find too, we are inventing new areas of design, tiny houses, houseboats, tree houses, AUDs. These are like little individual modular homes that they're building, container homes. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Some Airbnbs, that's kind of becoming a new niche. Most US interior design firms are in the 5 states, and one of them happens to be California. So California, Florida, Texas, New York, and Illinois, those will house the largest interior design firms. Now, we are seeing a lot of growth in Georgia and other various different places like Phoenix and bigger cities throughout the United States. But in California, we house some of the largest interior design firms in the country. We're very lucky. Trends, there are various trends. We're going to go really briefly over each one of these, but we'll start right here with the digital technology, of course. So digital technology, big data, Wi-Fi, 5G, smartphones, smart apps. I mean, all of that has affected interior design. So we now have to really be up on how to integrate this in our design. So you'll see things, a lot of data that you can access, and that is provided by the tech people that can help. And a lot of these elements in this technology is integrated in the space before we even start the design process. So design firms use big data practices to validate proposed design. So when we get data, we kind of use this data to help with our justification. If you want to do a smart home, creating sensors, how to integrate your Ring, tracking devices. Nowadays, they have digital keys. So it's really important that we are always up on the latest technology and information. And so you'll find that that is, super important in design. It's one of the trends. You can read more of those PowerPoints. I'm going to, post this. But also another trend is customers or the occupants are the customers. So the occupants become the designer customer, and it's really an interesting trend. They're part of it. Leaders and decision makers seek input from the occupants using the space. So even as I design, I often will interview the occupant to see what they're looking for. If I'm designing a medical facility, I will actually interview the nurses. What part are you looking for? A lot of times they want more storage or counter space. I interview the doctors. I interview, if it's a school, I interview the teachers. What are you looking for? Maybe students. What do you want? It's important that we are able to, collect that information and implement it in the design. So these provide a more personalized design solution. Some nurses are very adamant about wanting a movable screen or a higher desk so that they can stand. So these are the elements. So when the occupants are the customers, so you can interview and find out who is consuming this space. Visual design is huge right now. It's almost expected. People using tools like SketchUp and 3-dimensional forms. A lot of companies even have their own virtual ability to, like, you can go to Sherwin-Williams Paint and look at a room and implement it and add a color, and you can see virtually how it's going to look. So there's a lot of tools right now. We teach you SketchUp, illustration, some of these BIM, building information modeling programs that will help you to see, the virtual reality of your space. You can do walkthroughs and videos. So visual design is really important to communicate the design. And we're seeing that in films and different techniques. So that's always changing. So once again, continuing education is extremely important because you want to learn some of these programs that will help with the visual design. Total well-being and the need for the escape for the design. This is also creating a spa-like environment of wellness is a phenomena. Workplaces, leaders, they seek ways to provide a healthy lifestyle as much as possible. When you think of Google, they have napping pods or areas that they include a lot of nature and like retreats where people can go back and reconnect. So it helps with chronic disease areas. They finding that if they can create wellness areas within the workspace or even within the homes, that it enhances productivity, reduces employee turnover. If an employee is happy and getting some of their health needs met, their mind, body, soul, spirit, the whole kind of being, it really is something that's being integrated and thought of in design. And so this kind of need to little escape areas, even in a workplace, little walks help to reverse some of that chronic conditions of fatigue and so forth. And so that's kind of interesting, you know, that we're thinking that way in the total, instead of just being a workhorse. And even a coffee house or a beautiful interior does help as well. And consumers are seeking not only physical and emotional health, like I said, they even may even offer financial health, or even like a doctor office within the building so that you can go to. And maybe flexible work weeks where you're working only 4 days, or a daycare inside there, a gym. So we see these type of things that people don't have access to. They're kind of creating it all under one umbrella in a space just to enhance the employees you know, experience. Healthy foods, cafeterias, instead of crappy snacks, you know, in a vending machine. So it's, and you know, like I said, incorporating nature. Smart homes, huge trend. A lot of you may have some of those, but pre-programming locks, thermostats, this is very complex. And when you are dealing with a smart home, you have to remember to design around it. You don't want to add a chandelier that's going to affect a camera angle. Different, you know, elements of the electrical, that the AV, audio visual systems throughout. So when you're dealing with smart homes, you want to work with the AV person, the audio visual, or the security person who's doing these, so that it's a flawless integration. And, you know, like I said, and they're really including these in hotels now. They have smart keys. It's fascinating. Another trend is sustainable design. That is when we are using, being mindful of just ecology, human equity, economy, just a lot of sustainability on every level, not just with the environment. And they are sound design principles, especially that really in your construction, the materials you use, the energy. So green design is really been integrated through the space as a trend. One of the ways to ensure something is a green design is to adhere to the US Green Building Council. They have some standards, and we have standards called Cal Green. And it's often integrated in California, that these green standards are actually already integrated in a lot of our codes. But if a building wants to become green, they can subscribe to USGB's standards. And there's a system called LEED rating system. And it's leading in energy and energy and environmental design. And this LEED, they have a point system. And the more points you get, the higher you get graded. You can just be LEED certified, you can be silver, gold, and platinum. And the more higher and more expensive the metal, the more green that building is. There's a lot of benefits to become a green LEED rated a certified building. You get tax credits. It's a healthier environment. It looks good on a PR point of view. So there's benefits. Design of physical environment has the potential to support resiliency and starve off helplessness that results from trauma. That's interesting. So that's just kind of also too, is that physical environment that you are supporting, it really helps to calm the nervous system, to create a healthy well-being within, you know, humans too. So sustainability isn't just with green design, but it's kind of goes across the board for just health and wealth and safety of a human in our mindset too as well. Now there's global trends. We're seeing these happen. And in global trends, that's just a big thing, but you really have to get the heartbeat of the culture of the what's going on in the area. So research is really involved in global trends, especially when you're unfamiliar with the culture. So it's important to dive in, finding out things about space planning, their proxemics, how they lay out their spaces based on feng shui or room placements. Some bring in religious elements to that, or spiritual elements. Some utilize color differently. They may have different things that are unfamiliar. So it's important because we're such a global with the internet now and travel and be able to connect globally, that you are starting to see a lot more population explosion. You're starting to see a lot more design globally that in places that you normally wouldn't have. Dubai is blowing up and becoming a real mecca for design. And so they have a different cultural experience that you would need to research. So global design trends, they're definitely a lot of intellectual property rights differ. So we have to be careful when we are dealing in different countries and so forth. Other trends in design for all. So this is when we are designing for everyone. We call this inclusive design. And that's something that you're going to hear over and over again. And there's 3 terms that we use a lot for this. And when you start continuing your education, you'll hear this over and over. One is aging in place. The other one's inclusive design and universal design. They kind of are interchangeable. And this is designing for different populations to create an equitable design for them, space, so they have access the same as anyone else. So the aging in place is really the truth is people are living longer, and the baby boomers are retiring, and we're finding that they have the most discretionary income than other retirees. So they're able to spend a little bit more money, and they're able to make their space so that it is accessible to them as they age. And so this is a great niche for designers who want to go into a different form of design, aging in place, making things. This is maybe, having lower counters, easy to reach upper cabinets, creating a wheelchair or walker type friendly space, walk-in showers, handicap bars. There's a lot of things that you can do for aging in place, because a lot of people don't want to go to group homes anymore. They want to stay in their own home, but transform it into a place that they can live in. So you're really effective design solutions, they discourage helplessness. So when you are able to actually change the design, making a counter lower, so maybe an eating counter 34 inches and a wheelchair can go under, an elderly person can now cook for themselves. So you want to really, it empowers people that have some challenges due to aging or handicap to be able to function in their space. We're seeing this also in commercial design a lot. The inclusive or universal design, like I said, they're interchangeable. This is best of what I call like user-friendly design. Better design, things that are more functional, more comfortable for everyone. It removes a lot of barriers for people, not making things so complicated. Universal design of products or environment is to be used by all. So I call this user-friendly design. You'll see this a lot when you're designing hospitality, like a hotel room. Make that remote control easy, right? We don't want to need a PhD to work the remote control, or the coffee maker, very simple, or the microwave. So like all these components that we integrate in the design, making them so that like a 3rd grader can operate them. Okay. And that is kind of the universal design, a very simplistic, maybe symbols that are universal, that everyone knows, the female, male, like restroom symbol, for example. Okay. We're making that inclusive and universal, where it's across the globe. Evidence-based design trends, just another another element of design, and it says an approach to design that uses facts, professional judgment to develop informed design decisions. I mean, everyone should do their research. So we use this a lot in healthcare, especially. Let's say I am designing for, a neurodivergent population, autism, ADHD. There's a lot of grown, very high functioning, and I need to do some evidence-based design on what type of colors or how to design a space to help them focus. So that's when I would go and really do some dive-in research. Lack of clutter, certain colors that help to calm the nervous system, things in that nature. So it is important that we have access to design. We do our due diligence. If you're doing a preschool, how to stimulate, but also calm, things like that, and what activates certain behaviors through that research. We're going to continue, technology trends. There's a lot going on there, like I said, with just the technology and design, utilizing, we have now scanners that can scan a space and create a three-dimensional model. The internet is really allowing us to access things we didn't have before, and connect with different people, send drawings out. So technology and business right now is really, hand in hand. We're going to go through this. We got a lot of different type of technology. You can kind of read these individually. But obviously, like I said, utilizing rendering programs to be able to create virtual spaces, super important. Okay, so we've kind of hit that milestone, and we are going to kind of continue and wrap this latter part up. If you need a pause now, this might be a good time. Okay, and a summary. Oh, I guess that did do it. So we are going to wrap this up. Describe a place where you have seen universal design. So, think about that as you reflect over all we've talked about, all that design is, how it started, how it's formulated. Places like, when you go to amusement parks, they try to make them user friendly. When you're going into, a commercial space, a hotel room that is accessible, that type of thing, Also, I was thinking about technology. I was at MGM and I used a key that was just on my phone. I didn't have a key. It was a virtual key. So it's interesting how we can look and see that all of these trends that are happening in design and how we as designers have to constantly be utilizing them and integrating them in our design. So I would like to thank you for your time. Go ahead and make sure that you do quiz 4. And if you'd like to review chapter 3, it's got a lot of content, but it will be not dived in deeply. You will not have to worry about that quiz. So thank you for taking the time to chit chat with me and to review this content. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.